यहाँ मेरो यहाँ चाँडोभन्दा चाँडो सकेर म गर्नु भने music in the struggle for influence. It's a jingle out there. Jingle out there. There is a good explanation for why the presence of music stretches both from the start of human recorded history and across the breadth, breadth of human societies. Breadth, because of a unique collection of detectable regularities, rhythm, meter, intensity, pulse, and time. Music possesses rare synchronizing power. A listener can easily become aligned with one another along motoric, sensory, vocal, and emotional dimensions. A state of affairs that leads to familiar markers of unity, such as self-other merging, social cohesion and supportive conduct. In this last respect, consider the results of a study in Germany of 4-year-old children as part of a game. Some of the kids walked around the circle with a partner while singing and keeping time in their movements with recorded music. Other kids did nearly the same but without the accompaniment of music. Later, when the children had an opportunity to show helpfulness, those who had sung and walked together in the with music were over 3 times more likely to help their partner than were those who did not have a persuasive joint musical experience. The series also made a pair of instructive points about the helping they observed. First, they noted that it was self-sacrificial, requiring the helper to give up some personal playtime to assist a partner. That jointly experienced music and movement increased later self-sacrifice so impressively has to be a revelation to any parent who has tried to alter the alter the characteristically selfish choices of a 4-year-old at play. Leah, it's time to give Haley a turn with that toy. Leah, you come back here. You come back here. With the right now. The author's second noteworthy comment strikes me as at least as important as the first. The children's personal sacrifice didn't arise from any rational weighting of the reasons for and against providing assistance. The help wasn't rooted in rationality at all. It was spontaneous initiative, intu, intu, intuitive, spontaneous भनेको त सुने हो इन्सुएटिभ भनेको के हो बुढी यस कसले गर्छ त सधैँ कहिले हरायो कति दिन पछाडि बल्ल आज हराउँदैछ यहाँनिर एउटा स्पोन्टेनियस SPONTANEOUS सहज सहज स्पोन्टेनियस अनि इन्सुएटिभ भनेको के रहेछ हेर त ENTUI अनि TIVE ए के भनेर प्रनाउन्स गर्दो रहेछ मैले राइट राइट प्रनाउन्स टियुआइटिआइभी यस इन्टुइटिभ यो पनि सहजै अरे and based on an emotional sense of connection that naturally accompanies said musical engagement. The implications of this point for managing the social influence process are significant. Systems engineering, behavioral scientists have long arrested the existence of two ways of assessing and knowing. The most recent such assertion to gain widespread attention is Daniel Kahneman's treatment of the distinction between System 1 and System 2 thinking. The first is fast, associative, intuitive, and often emotional, whereas the second is over deliberative, analytical, and rational. Support for the separateness of the two approaches comes from evidence that activating one inhibits the other, just as it is difficult to think hard about an occurrence while experiencing it emotionally. Fully experiencing the occurrence is difficult while parsing it logically. There's an implication for influence. Persuaders would be wise to match the system 1 versus 2 orientation of any appeal to the corresponding orientation of the recipient. Thus, if you are considering a car purchase primarily from the standpoint of its emotionally relevant features, attractive looks, and exhilarating acceleration, a salesperson would be well advised to convince you by using feelings related arguments. Research suggests that even merely saying, I feel this is the one for you, will be more successful. But if you are considering the purchase primarily on rational grounds, fuel economy, and trade in value, I think this is the one for you, would be more likely to close the sale. Music's influence is of the system one variety in their sensory and visceral responses. People sing, swing, snake, and sway in rhythmic alignment with it, and if together with each other. Rarely do they think analytically while music is prominent in consciousness. Under music's influence, the deliberative, rational route to knowing becomes difficult to access and hence largely unavailable. Two commentaries speak to a regrettable upshot. The first, a quote from Voltaire is contemptuous. Anything too stupid to be spoken, he asserted, is sung. The second, an ad from the advertising profession, is tactical. If you can't make your case to an audience with facts, sign it to them. Thus, communicators whose ideas have little rational firepower don't have to give up the fight. They can undertake a flanking maneuver, equipping themselves with music and song. They can move their campaign to a battleground where rationality possesses little force and where sensations of harmony, synchrony, and unity win. This recognition has helped me resolve a long standing personal mystery, one that was particularly vexing to me as a young man with no musical talent. Why are young women so attracted to musicians? There's no logic to it, right? Precisely, it doesn't precisely it doesn't matter that the probabilities of a successful relationship with most musicians are notoriously low. Those are rational probabilities. And it doesn't matter that the current and future economic prospects of most musicians are equally low. Those are economic reasons. Music isn't about such practicalities. It's about harmonies, melodic ones that lead to emotional and rational ones. Besides, because of their common grounding in emotion and harmony, music and romance are strongly associated with one another in life. What would you say is the percentage of contemporary songs with romance as their subject? According to a recent systematic count, it's 80%, the vast majority. That's amazing. Romance isn't at issue the vast majority of the time when we speak or think or write, but it is when we sing. So now I understand why young women who are at a peak age for interest in both romance and music have a weakness for musicians. Powerful links between the two types of experience make musicians hard to resist. Want some scientific proof? If not, just pretend I'm singing you the results of a friend's study in with initially skeptical होने के लिए से रहता है. Skeptical. SKEPT. Yes. Skeptical. कहाँ पुग्यो फेरि यो मान्छेले कहाँ पुर्यायो मलाई researchers had a man approach young woman and ask for their phone numbers while he was carrying a guitar case, sports bag, or nothing. For anyone interested in maximizing guitar sales, ugly guys with good-looking girls, zeros into guitar heroes. For anyone interested in maximizing persuasive success, the critical takeaway from this section should not be merely that music is allied with System 1 responding or that people olive green olive one responding or that people act imprudently improve prove Imprudenty अभिवेकी भने विवेकहीन भनेर लेख्दा हुन्छ होला नि when channeled to that kind of responding, the far larger relation involves the importance of matching the system 1 versus 2 character of a persuasive communication with the system 1 versus 2 mindset of its intended audience. Recipients with non-rational hedonistic goals should be matched with messages containing non-rational elements such as musical accompaniment, whereas the rational pragmatic goals should be matched with messages containing rational elements such as facts. In his outstanding book Persuasive Advertising, Evidence-Based Principles, marketing expert J. Scott Armstrong reported that in a 2008 analysis of 30-second TV commercials, 87% incorporated music, but this routine addition of music to the masses might well be flawed, as Armstrong also reviewed the relevant research and concluded that music should be used only to advertise familiar, feelings-based products, snack foods, body scents in an emotional context. That is, where thinking is unlikely for products that have high personal consequences and strong supportive arguments, safety equipment, software packages. That is, for which hard thinking is likely an instructive background music undercuts ad effectiveness. Continuing reciprocal exchange. In early 2015, a New York Times article ignited an explosion of radar interest, interest, and commentary, going viral and becoming one of the most widespread Times pieces ever. For news outlets such as the Times, this occurrence might not seem extraordinary given its elevated journalistic standing on topics of great national and international import. But this particular piece appeared not in its politics, business, technology, science, or health pages, but in the fashion and style section, as is reflected in the easy's title. To fall in love with anyone, do this. Its author, Mandelain Catron claimed to have found a marvelously effective way to produce the intense emotional closeness and social bonds of love in the space of 45 minutes. 45 minutes. She knew it worked, she said, because it had worked for her. The technique came from a program of research initiated by a husband and wife team of psychologists, Arthur and Elaine Aron, who hit upon it their investigations of close relationships. It involves a specific form of coordinated action in which partners engage in a reciprocal turn-taking exchange sequence. Other psychologists have demonstrated that a history of reciprocally exchanged favors leads individuals to give additional favors to their exchange partners. भात खाऊ न चाउचाउ खाने होइन त्यो झन् त्यो चाउचाउ खाने हुन्न हुन्न भने थाहा छैन त्यही त no matter who provided the last one, it's tendency that fits with my account of the Harrisons agreeing to a house an 18-year-old student they had never met, not because they owed his family a favor, but because they had a decade-long history of exchanging holiday cards with them. The process of reciprocal exchange had prompted the Harrison's ascent by creating a relationship rather than an unmet obligation. The Arons and their co-workers helped explain this kind of willing ascent by showing how extended reciprocal exchanges bind the transactors together, but they did so by employing a particularly unifying type of reciprocal exchange strong enough to unify people into love with each other, personal self-disclosure. The procedure was not complicated in Paris. Participants took turns reading questions to their partner, who would answer and who would then receive their partner's answer to the same item. Advancing through the 36 questions required participants to disclose progressively more personal information about themselves and, in turn, to learn more personal information about their partner. An early question would be, what would constitute a perfect day for you? Whereas later in the sequence, a question would be, what do you value most in a friendship? What do you value most in a friendship? And near the end of the list, a question would be, of all the people in your family, whose death would be the most disturbing? Relationships depend beyond all expectations. The procedure generated feelings of emotional closeness and interpersonal unity that are unparalleled within a 45-minute span, especially among complete strangers in an emotionally sterile laboratory setting. Moreover, the outcome was no chance occurrence. According to an interview with Line Aron, hundreds of studies using the method have since confirmed the effect, and some participants have even gotten married as a result. In that same interview, Dr. Aaron described two aspects of the procedure that she felt are key to its effectiveness. First, the item scaled in a personal disclosure. Thus, when responding, participants increasingly open themselves up to one another in a trusting way representative of tightly bonded pairs. Second, and in keeping with the overarching the theme of the chapter, participants do so by acting together, that is, in a coordinated back and forth fashion, making the interaction inherently and continuously synchronous. Co-creation. Hello, hello, who's there? I'm feeling sleepy now. Okay, I'm gonna turn this camera, okay? And then I'm gonna read it. Long before wilderness preservation became a value among many Americans, a man named Aldo Leopold was championing the cause, principally during the 1930s and 1940s, when he held the first ever professorship of wildlife management in the United States. At the University of Wisconsin, he developed a distinctive ethical approach to the topic, as detailed in his best-selling book, or Sand Country Almanac. It challenged the dominant model of environmental conservation, in which natural ecologies were to be managed for the purpose of human usage. It advocated instead for an alternative based on the right of all plant and animal species to existence in their natural state whenever possible. Possessed of such a clear and heartfelt position, he was more than surprised one day to find himself, axe in hand, behaving in contradiction of it. Contradiction of it. कम से कम मोबाइल यहाँ छेउमा राखेको त हुन्थ्यो यार। टाउको मान्छे छ यार टाउकोमा छ कन्ट्राडिक्सन कहाँ पुग्यो यार कन्ट्राडिक्सन 1999 CONTRE contradiction विरोधाभास खण्डन खण्डन गर्नु खण्डन contradiction was खण्डन हो र अब यहाँ कसले कुन फोनले सर्च गर्ने त दिएर जानु पर्दैन कस्तो देखाउँदो रहेछ तिमी त त्यहाँ राखेर अहिले अभि भर्खर मान्छे उठेर गएर टिपेर लिएर आएर बल्ल एउटा सर्च गर्दैछ खण्डन कन्ट्राडिक्सन भनेको खण्डन खण्डन मम्मी मम्मी मम्मीको फेरि खाना खाने टाइमिङ छैन फेरि के गर्नु contradiction of it by cutting down a red birch tree on his property so that one of his white pines would get more light and space to grow. Why he wondered would he act or favor the pine over the birch that according to his avowed ethic AVOWED avowed ethic प्रतिज्ञा गरिएको had as much right to exist naturally as any tree on his land. Perplexed, Leopold searched his mind for the logic behind his bias. Bias भनेको के पो हाल्थ्यो अरे उसले bias एकतर्फी झुकाव bias and in considering various differences between the two types of trees that might account for the preference encountered only one he was convinced was the primary factor. It was one that had nothing to do with logic but was entirely founded on feelings. Well, first of all, I planted the pine with my shovel, my shovel, whereas, whereas the birds crawled in under the fence and planted itself. My bias is thus to some extent paternal. Get it? Leopold was not unique in feeling a special affinity for something he had a hand in creating. It's a common human occurrence. For example, in what researchers have termed the IKEA effect, people who have built items themselves come to see their amateurish creations as similar in value to experts' creations. As suits, our current focus on the effect of acting together, it is worth inquiring into an additional pair of possibilities with people who had a hand in creating something hand in hand with another come to feel a special affinity not only for their creation but also for their co-creator. कति छिटो लागेको के आत्मीयता not only their creation but also for their co-creator. What's more, might this exceptional affinity stem from a feeling of unity with the other that's detectable in the characteristic consequences of elevated liking and self-sacrificial support for the partner. Let's seek the answer to those questions by resolving a prior one. Why will I begin this section on co-creation with Aldo Leopold's description of the effect of planting of a pine by himself? छैन हौ, कति चाहिँ भयो त? बल्ल 33 हुँदैछ. It's simply that, as I'm certain he would agree, he was no lone actor in the process. He was a co-creator with nature of the mature pine he once put in the ground as a sapling, sapling, ground as a sapling. Sapling. बिरुवा अरे बा. Oh, the intriguing Possibility that arises is whether, as a result of acting together with Mother Nature, he came to feel more merged with her and, as a consequence, even more enamored and respectful of his partner in the collaboration. If that were so, we would have an indication that co-creation can be a route to unification. Regrettably, Mr. Leopold has not been available for questioning on the possibility since 1948, but I am confident of the answer. A portion of the confidence comes from the results of a study I helped conduct and investigate the effects of managers' degree of personal involvement in the creation of a work product. I would expected that the more involvement managers felt they would have in generating the final product in concert with an employee, the higher they would rate its quality, which is what we found. Managers led to believe that they would have a large role in developing the end product. An ad for a new wristwatch rated the ad 50% more favorably than did managers led to believe they would have little developmental involvement, even though the final ad they saw was identical in all cases. In addition, we found that the managers with the greatest perceived involvement rated themselves more responsible for the ad's quality in terms of their much greater perceived managerial control over their employee, which I would also expected, but I didn't expect a third finding at all. The more the managers attributed the success of the project to themselves, the more they also attributed it to the ability of their employee. I recall data, table in hand, experience a moment of surprise, perhaps not as striking as Leopold axe in hand moment, but a moment of surprise nonetheless. How could supervisors with greater perceived involvement in the development of a work product see themselves and a single coworker on the project as each more responsible for its successful final form? Only 100% of personal responsibility can be distributed, right? And if one party's perceived personal contribution goes up by simple logic, the work partners should go down, not up. I just didn't get it at the time, but now I think I do. If co-creation causes at least a temporary merging of identities, then what applies to one partner also applies to the other. Distributional logic notwithstanding. Asking for advice is good advice. Co creation doesn't only reduce the problem of getting supervisors to give more credit to employees who have worked productively on a project, it can loosen a host of other traditionally hard to diminish difficulties. Children below the age of 6 or 7 are typically selfish when it comes to sharing rewards, rarely distributing them equally with playmates, unless they have obtained those rewards through a collaborative effort with a playmate, where often even 3-year-olds share equally the majority of the time. In the standard classroom, students tend to coalesce along racial, ethnic, a couple is it? Oh, है सही हो सही हो के बार परेछ र हेर न पहिला म मेरो तिमी जाऊ न and socioeconomic lines finding friends and helpmates मलाई surprise देऊ न mainly within their own groups. However, this pattern declines significantly after they have engaged co-creatively with students from the other groups within cooperative learning exercises in which each student has to teach a portion of the information. What is this? कहाँ पुगेर म एकैछिनमा यो सकिहाल्छु सक्नु आँट्यो कहाँ पुगेर yeah, portion of the information to the others so that they can all get a good score. Companies struggle to get consumers to feel bonded with and therefore loyal to their brands. It's a battle they have been winning by inviting current and prospective customers to co-create with them novel or updated products and services, most often by providing the company with information as to desirable features. Hmm? के अलिअलि त भइहाल्छ नि अब सधैँ नयाँ कहाँ बस्छु त नि 2 वर्ष हुन लागिसक्यो 5,000को किरानीले 2 वर्ष टिके ठिकै त अरे मन भरि बोल्दैमा बतलाग्ने होइन हजुर हुँदैमा यति धेरै लुगा सुकाएर राखेको छु त्यहाँ बोल्दैमा लाग्ने होइन कन्छ त्यही त भने भोलि पर्सि आफ्नै हुँदैछ त्यतिखेर थाहा हुन्छ झन् ए, काममा पनि पो जानलाई पो दिक्कै गर्ला जस्तो छ त अरू ठाउँमा चाहिँ कसरी लाग्यो त पहेँलो त्यही त सिरानीमा उयोले भयो भए त अन्त चाहिँ कसरी लाग्यो त भन्ने कुरा हो कि सेतो नयाँ हुन्जेल राम्रो अलिअलि उयो भएपछि छैन काम चाहिँ यस थिएन जस्तो लाग्यो कहाँबाट आउँछ अचम्म लाग्छ जान्छ होला खालि कटनले गर्नु गर्यो नि शान्तिको किराको बदले भइछन् लौ लौ चलो हुन्छ मैले धुन नजाने हो किन एबा हो 47 minutes गएछ कहाँ एकजना त्यही हो युट्युब टिमहरू पनि मुलाहरू सबै राम्रोसँग चलाउँदै नचलाओ कि के हो के म त बुझ्दिनँ घाममा त त्यस्तै त हो त नि 4-3-7 टन्नै चलेछ त्यसको त मेरो मुस्किलले चलाउँछ उनीहरूको चाहिँ यत्रो यत्रो चल्दो रहेछ यार रातभरिमा झनक झनक रिस उठ्छ मलाई केमा तिम्रो ब्राइटनेस त्यत्रो धेरै त राख्नु हुँदैन भाइ अन्ध भइन्छ बेलामा कुनको मेरो फोनमा त्यो त तिम्रो हो नि तिम्रो आँखा अन्ध होला नि त नि हजुरले अघि गर्नुभएको मैले डेरोमै राखेको थिएँ हुन्छ जस्ता जस्तो मैले के को ब्राइटनेस साइटनेस चलाएकै छैन के को त जानु हो र एकछिन यहाँ म अझै छ